development roles throughout her career, and we are so lucky to have her join us. Thank you, Malva.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for that introduction. I just wanted to jump on tonight just to say hello and to welcome our commissioner. I'm really excited to do this introduction on our first virtual What's on Tap. And I'm really excited that the commissioner is joining our young professionals this evening to talk about everything small business services and beyond. I also want to thank our moderator today, Dave Seliger, who will host the conversation with Commissioner Doris. SBS has a very special place in my heart. When I started this business right after grad school, I founded a business improvement district, and I had a very close relationship with the Department of Small Business Services, and it was a wonderful relationship. It was my first entree into city government, and I couldn't think of a better agency to partner with. So thank you so much for joining us, Commissioner Doris. Thank you so much, Dave, and I'll turn it right back over to you, Sarah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Malva. We're so lucky to have you and excited for this to be the first of many. I'd like to welcome you all again and thank Dave again for hosting. Dave is a member of our YP Steering Committee, a new member this year. He's the Senior Advisor for Service Design and Delivery at New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development. We're lucky to have him, and we're super lucky to have Commissioner Doris. So with that, I'll kick it off to Dave. I'd just like to remind you all to use the Q&A function to submit questions throughout, and to tag and post about ABNY using @ABetterNY. Thanks so much, and Dave, it's all you.
Great, thanks Sarah and Melva. So hi all, and thank you for joining us for ABNY Young Professionals. First, What's on Tap in 6 months. My name is Dave Seliger, and I'm a brand new member of the Young Professionals Steering Committee, where I help engage our growing community and plan and host events that are interesting and relevant to your professional development. As Sarah mentioned, I work at the city's housing department as a senior advisor, working on the Section 8 Housing Voucher Program. Just a quick note, nothing I say tonight is on behalf of my agency or represents my agency's views. This evening, I'm excited to lead a conversation with Commissioner Jonnel Doris, who I'll introduce in a moment, and then we'll open it up to questions from you. So Jonnel Doris was appointed Commissioner of the New York City Department of Small Business Services, or SBS, back in May. Small Business Services is tasked with connecting New Yorkers to good jobs, creating stronger businesses, and building a thriving economy in neighborhoods across the 5 boroughs. Commissioner Doris previously served as the city's first senior advisor and director of the Mayor's Office of Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprises, or MWBEs. He has also served as the first Chief Diversity Officer for the Governor's Office of Storm Recovery, and has held roles at Public Service Enterprise Group Long Island Power Authority, and Keyspan. So thank you, Commissioner, for joining us this evening. So
thank you for having me.
To start us off and provide some context for our conversation, could you describe the mission of the Department of Small Business Services and then touch on a few of the key programs?
Well, thank you so much, Dave, for having me. And I think, what a great leader that you all just have acquired here in Melva. I really know that she's going to take this organization to another level. So it's really good to have a fellow Queens resident here leading this wonderful organization, and known to work with her in the past, and look forward to really doing so in the future. And certainly good night to all of our young professionals who are out there. And of course, to our team, some of our team members are on. Welcome everyone. Listen, this Department of Small Business Services, I think, as you described, is really about where do we unlock opportunity and attach resources to the opportunity to ensure that everyone is reaching their full potential. I mean, that is essentially what we do. That is if you are a business owner and you like to get further assistance in understanding what it takes to run a business in the city, or what it takes to run a business at this particular time, what the skills you need, what you need to do as an entrepreneur, where are the access to resources that you need, it's be capital, people, connections, networks. That's what SBS is all about. Or if you are someone who's seeking to advance your career and you need additional training, we oversee all of the Workforce One centers and the workforce program for the city. You can link with us to upgrade your resume, to help you understand what you need to do for new markets that are developing, what kind of training you need, and also connect you with the folks to get you trained. And then after getting you trained, connect you to a job. And so we do all those things. It runs the gamut. And lastly, we deal with neighborhoods through our bids. As Melva said, she helped form the bid. Those business improvement districts are so important to our economy, to our commercial corridors, to help build and drive business, but also build community. And, that's what we do. We help work with those bids to make sure they're self-sufficient, make sure they have the resource they need, that they're running in the right way, that they're compliant, but also really to be a partner with them, collaboratively driving the city forward to really advancing our economic potential here at the city. So, I mean, that's a general sense of what we do. We do many things in between and around that with our over 300 employees. 7 business solution centers, 18 Workforce One centers. And, we really want to make sure that we're touching the community. So that's a general overview of what SBS does.
That's great. Thank you for that context. Now, I guess to back up, how did you decide to pursue a career in public service? What led you down this path towards becoming commissioner today?
Yeah, I mean, I think no one starts out saying I want to be a commissioner, right? But at least in my book, I mean, we want to figure out how to give back. For me, my mom and dad, my mom is retired from ACS. My dad still works for ACS in an executive position there. They're both social workers. I have 6 of us as children, so I got a long list of public servants to go through. So my eldest sister is a social worker in a school. My sister after that also works for ACS and also is a social worker. My other sister's in law enforcement. My brother is an electrician and works for the MTA. We are all public servants, and my younger brother, he's a computer genius and does that not in public service, but he does it in the private sector. So, our whole family is
so
really
he's
dedicated.
The black sheep of the family.
Well, he wouldn't think so. He probably thought he might be the smartest one out of us all. But look, we are in our blood, in our DNA, we are public servants, and we want to give back to the community. We want to serve the people. And for me, I started my career in the private sector, but understanding, private sector has its limitations for me. And when I learned that a policy or a change that I would do in the city or for a government entity or the state really touch so many people and so many aspects of our community, that for me, that's the driving thing, right? Like having the ability to do positive things for so many people and be able to touch so many lives on a broad scale. And that's what public service is. And you can do good for a whole lot of folks by, making the right decision, the right policy decisions, et cetera. You see that impact, multiply times and times over. And that's what our parents instilled in us about giving back and about public service. That's why, they put all of us through college, 6 of us, which is insane in itself. And really to push and drive this to us to say, when you get there, you have to look back and you have to help someone else. And you have to use your talents and gifts to really advance, your community. And that's why I'm still in public service. That's
great. So I saw in your bio that you actually have a master's degree in divinity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how has that experience influenced how you ended up here? What was that like?
Well, I must say that, for me, faith is a big part of who I am. My father and mother are also ministers. My wife is one as well. You know, it's just a part of who we are, and you know, it just adds to the fact that, you know, while we had our church, or we were you know, in ministry, we were able to help so many people, feed in people, helping them with financial literacy programs, and back to school drives for kids, and helping entire communities. Something I learned that's, you know, really, really important, that way back when I did this, when I was living in Brooklyn, we did the first ever, we call it the Crown Heights College and Career Expo. And we did it at MWBE College. First time in the history of Crown Heights, we did that. Wow. Hundreds and hundreds of people came, and they got jobs, and they hundreds of colleges, and I'm sorry, dozens of colleges took hundreds of kids that came in from the local schools, which I went to Clara Barton High School, which is just steps away from MWBE College. That came out of that work with our local, you know, clergy, and was able to bring all that positive energy to the Crown Heights community. That's an example of what is it, starting scholarship programs, which we did as well. Those are the types of things that drove me into studying more about, you know, about my faith, but also how I can use my faith to help others and the community at large. That's
great. So I guess, you know, here we are today. You have your new role as of a few months ago. So huge congrats to that.
Thank you.
What are your responsibilities as commissioner? What does that actually entail?
Well, I mean, it's a lot of responsibility. As you can imagine now, I really don't want to say another thing without acknowledging the reality that we are in right now due to COVID-19 crisis and the pandemic that has ensued. We, at any other point in time in the city's history, I think this is one that, you know, we really are the backbone. When I say we, the Small Business Services Department, really the backbone of getting this economy up and running. We've got 230,000 small businesses who employ over 3 million New Yorkers, right? And that is so critical, right, to making sure that we do whatever we can to get those small businesses back up and running. So our job and our function is really based upon what services and resources they need. How can we help facilitate those needs? And how can we make sure that they have a path to success, right? I mean, doing everything we can and finding every opportunity we can to link those businesses to fulfill their potential. So that is generally what we do in the business. On the workforce side, you know, we serve annually 100,000 people. You know, folks don't really know that 100,000 people come through our Workforce One centers, and we help them connect to jobs, training, and all the other pieces that they need to actually advance their careers. So for us, that's part of our core function. All right. The categories, as I mentioned before, also include neighborhoods, how we sort of work with community-based organizations to build vibrant neighborhoods where all New Yorkers really can live and thrive, right? Overseeing the largest network of bids. You know, we have, you know, depending on what do you call a bid or an organization, maybe over 80 that we work with on a consistent basis. And then, you know, administering those grant programs to revitalize the commercial districts and work with investing in those communities. I mean, that is generally, you know, again, the general work of what we do, and the responsibilities that I have as commissioner is to make sure that we are overseeing that and it's working in the right way, that we are speaking to as many people as we possibly can, and we're engaging as many of our community members as we can in the rebuilding process, in the process of how do we get out of this situation with COVID? How do we save as many small businesses as possible? How do we get people back to work? We've got 1 million people out of work in the city. Unbelievable. We went from 3.4% unemployment to 20% in a matter of months. I mean, that is unconscionable. How do you deal with that? So we're working every day to pivot our services and resources so that we can make sure that if someone knocks on our door, somebody's there to answer, but not just answer, but they have an actual resource or an answer for them for their issue.
That's great. And we'll talk about COVID a little bit more in a few minutes. But, one of your other responsibilities is actually an internal one. You have a responsibility for your 300 or so employees at SBS, which I'm guessing is one of the largest organizations that you've been at the helm of. How are you feeling about taking on such a big, organization and workforce, and now kind of directing the work of all those people? What does that feel like?
Yeah, look, I mean, certainly been in executive positions before, but certainly, yeah, I mean, a direct line of individuals, 330 or so plus, depends on the year. We have to make sure, number one, and I think for me, the strength of an organization is based upon its people. That is it, not its policies, which are important, not its procedures, those are important, but it's really about the people. And that's how I manage, and to really to help equip the people at the agency, to give them the necessary resources that they need to grow, to training, the additional training. But also, I think there's something that's important here. We have to listen to and our those who work with us, our colleagues in our agencies. Many times they have the answers to a lot of the problems we're trying to solve. And as an executive, if you don't have an open door, if you don't have a way for your team to communicate effectively to you, then we're not getting to where we need to go. A lot of the innovative things we've done during COVID came really out of our own people, right? They understand the communities, they understand our businesses, they understand those individuals who are seeking support and help. And so one part of my management, sort of way of managing, I should say, is really to lean on the experts, the people who are there every day, who've been with this agency for decades, some of them, working really to advance the mission of SBS. And so, yes, managing that team is very important, being able to speak to them, being able to have constant communication, being able to hear from them and implement some of the recommendations that they put forward, and valuing them as individuals. And I think that is part of the work and one of the most critical components of our work.
Yeah. And I can only imagine that it's that much harder with everyone being remote now. Having to take government, doing it from home is so hard. How do you continue to keep that open door when everyone's, reporting in from all 5 boroughs, as opposed to, all the offices or cubicles on one floor?
Yeah, in the transition, that was one thing that, you had to keep top of mind, because it's, how do we create a culture, a community of, remotely? And I think there's several ways we're doing that. But one of the ways is that I have regular all staff meetings. All staff meetings in a general context. And, you work for an agency, it's seldom do they happen. I mean, it's a very unique thing to have. I've had several of those since I became commissioner in the last 3 months, and really being able to connect with our staff and our colleagues who work with us to let them know that we're here. And so that's one thing. The other piece is, we have different programs that we put forth, to help you. We just had one, which I enjoyed a lot, because I have 2 kids, and they're home from school. Now it's 6 months of them being home with me and my wife, and we both have to work high stress jobs. And these kids, they still need to, learn, and they need to go to school, and they need to be engaged, and they can't go and hang out with their friends. And they can't hang out with, they're even family and neighbor, right? I mean, it's because of the crisis. And so we had a bring your kid Zoom day, and everybody brought their kid, and it was amazing, man. Oh man, it was so good. I mean, to see all those kids, and then my kids, of course, just jumped right in, and they were just having a ball just to see other kids on the screen and just have some kind of communication. So, we do things like that really to help build community, but also with a really laser focus on, our SBS family, right? And making sure that we're not leaving anybody by the wayside, right? Like during this time. And that's how we've been able to build some community, even in the crisis that we're in.
Yeah, that's great. So I guess drilling down a little bit more into the crisis, what are your top priorities? And I guess more specifically, what are the top 3 things that you really want to achieve in this role?
Yeah, it's interesting because for us coming in, for myself coming in at such a time, it is normally you have a time to sit down and do some planning as a commissioner and bring everybody in. And you have a few months to think things through. And maybe I want to rearrange the agency, or maybe I want to change this function. None of that, right? It's immediate. You have to be responsive immediately. So when I got this job, really from the mayor charged me with saving as many small businesses as possible. Priority number 1, saving as many small businesses as possible. And we're doing that really by connecting businesses to financial relief, legal assistance, training, jobs for essential workers. We're doing that work, right? But we're also executing on something that's unique for me, and I think for the agency, on an aggressive 5-borough strategy. What does that mean? In the past, I think, while the work was great, we still, and a lot of our concentration of businesses are in Manhattan. The outer boroughs, I think we needed to create and coming from outer boroughs, either Brooklyn and or Queens, which I've lived in both, to really think about what services do we provide? Are we reaching those out of borough businesses and those job seekers? Are we really speaking to them? So part of my priority is implementing an aggressive 5-borough strategy. That's doubling down on our community engagement, partnering with the CBOs, electeds, the chambers in those particular high need areas. And then secondly, delivering services in a strategically and equitable way through data, right? And when you do that, the data should tell you where to go. So that's a way we're retooling some of the things that we're doing. And then, thirdly, really identifying and connecting small businesses with additional financing and support. I think, if we focus that 5-borough strategy on these really 3 major components, we really get to the businesses that are being left out, the individual communities who do not have the support like others do, and the job seekers who may feel that Manhattan is too far for me, I can't get there, or I want to be able to do something in my own community. And so we're working on those things. But to do this work, every time I take over an organization, I always set some guiding principles and core principles. And the 3 that really are driving our work here at SBS now is number 1, innovation. And when you think about innovation, it's about making sure that we are creatively looking at problems and the ways that we can solve those issues. And then coming up with those solutions to actually drive business, drive growth, and drive advancement. And then secondly is collaboration. I think anything that the COVID-19 crisis have taught us, that collaboration is absolutely critical. If you are not collaborating with each other effectively, private sector, public sector, together, working to resolve this issue, government, intergovernmental, all these challenges, even with, say, PPE, when we were trying to get all the PPE we can, because the supply chain was so not coordinated, and it was just all over the place, if I may. And folks were not talking to each other. I'm talking about federal government, state government, local governments, private sectors. No one is really engaging. You saw the effects of that. We had an inefficient system and structure that really, really hurt New York City. And so we're building around collaboration. How do we move forward? And we've been demonstrating that so many times. And then the last one is around adaptability. If we're not building companies, individuals, communities that are flexible and adaptable to the changing environment around them, such as we did with COVID-19, we're not going to be successful. And our communities, our businesses, SBS will not be sustainable, right? We'll have sort of spurts of growth and economic activity and so forth, but it's not, you can't contain it, right? It's limited. And so that's why I think those 3 principles are what's driving us and will continue to drive us around the work we do.
That's great. And another piece of the puzzle is obviously workforce. And I know from my own experience in workforce development, one of the only real solutions is to get companies to commit to actually hiring candidates. But, companies are always wary of making that commitment. They'd rather just, advise or, do something for good press. But recently, there's a new organization called the New York Jobs CEO Council that's committed to hiring 100,000 low-income and Black, Latino, and Asian workers over the next 10 years. How is SBS trying to think about working or collaborating with this council on such a big undertaking?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, we actually thought about, I was there when the mayor announced it at the press conference. And we were part of that press conference, and we were also talking, I believe at that point, talking about our commercial lease assistance program for small businesses. And look, I think it's great that the CEOs are doing that. I think it's much needed. Great to see the private sector making a commitment to hiring people with low income, right, and people of color. We know that this crisis have devastated those communities more than any other community. And look, our Workforce One Center system, as I mentioned, right, we interact with and serve 100,000 New Yorkers every year and connect about 25,000 of them to jobs. So when you think about that, most of our customers are people of color. So we are happy really to engage with this new organization. The mayor, again, announced it, the New York Jobs CEO Council. We want to partner with them. One way I think we can strategically work together is on training, right? They're looking as CEOs of the largest corporations and organizations, not only in the city, but in the nation. They're looking for talent. They're looking for how can we help these individuals who some may not have the full set of training or skills. How do we get them that? And that's where I think the partnership between SBS and our Workforce One centers and our workforce team will be very useful. And I think just a demonstration of the collaboration we mentioned before as a key principle to drive sustainability in economic growth in New York City.
And as you mentioned a few times, Workforce One is serving, I think you said 100,000 people every year. You are probably expecting that you're going to see a lot more people coming in through the door. What work are you doing right now to prepare Workforce One to really scale up to serve a larger number of New Yorkers? What does that actually look like?
Oh, yeah. So we've been, we've been working remotely since the start of the pandemic and adjusting and tweaking and being adaptable, as I mentioned, is a core principle, to be flexible in making sure that whatever needs are there, we're meeting those needs, but we're meeting those needs based upon, what is coming through the door. And when you think about it, I've been working with my team for the last several months, knowing that the uptick in unemployment will also increase an uptick in our clientele that will come through the door at our Workforce One centers, right? Those New Yorkers who are coming in asking questions about how can I get retrained or how can I get a new job or can you help me, dust off my resume, right? I haven't had to use this, my interview skills. So what we've been doing is working with our Workforce One staff and vendors to prepare. And so we have a comprehensive, interactive online platform and system that we're using. We can take in more right now. We've already set our pace of tripling our capacity as it pertains to when we can, as needed, we can turn it on to triple that capacity. So if we're taking 100,000 annually, we have a system and structure that can do 3 times that amount right now. And as we monitor it, right, if we need to go higher and do more, we have that in place. So we have set the foundation, the infrastructure in place, the technology also. This is really in the weeds, but I'm sure your audience is probably interested in that. But down to the technology, right? We've adjusted, we've improved upon. Because your intake is all electronic now, and so as an intake, as it comes in, it has to be able to route it to the right individuals, have to route it to the right place, and so that those individuals will be able to be assisted. And we've helped tens of thousands of folks already during the pandemic, and we'll continue to do so. We're ready for it, and again, we are prepared. Our systems are prepared. Our infrastructure is prepared. We have the staffing. which is critically important. And all of our workforce, all 18 of them, the managers of those facilities have prepared plans to deal with the uptick. And so we're ready for it.
That's great. You also talked a little bit about business improvement districts or BIDs at the start of this conversation. And BIDs really play a large role in the health of their neighborhoods, helping to develop those neighborhoods, build out more resources. But if BIDs are losing their revenue streams by small businesses closing, what role can SBS continue to play in transforming neighborhoods? Is SBS going to need to step up and fill in the gap that BIDs have historically played?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Working with our BIDs is critical. I mean, we sit on those BIDs boards, we give advice, we oversee them, we make sure that they're compliant. But the majority of the BID revenues come in from assessments, which is collected by the property owners, from the property owners by the Department of Finance. So based upon the assessment of a particular property or corridor, those assessments are paid through the Department of Finance and then goes directly to the BIDs, right? And in the bid process, when you form a bid, that's part of it, right? Like there's an assessment process. Everyone agrees that, the property owners would pay a certain assessment. That money then will go to the BIDs to help keep the corridor vibrant and maximize the efforts there. And so, we, only the property owners are assessed to fund the bid. So it's not really the small businesses that are funding that, right? But the property owners. And the assessment, it does not change as a result of success of a business, right? Which I think is important, or non-success. So it depends. It's based on a law. It's part of the law and a form of the law based upon the property values and the assessment that is actually applied. So I think in general the bids are solid. Their assessments are still there, but they're critical partners in the success of what we do for our small businesses in their districts. I've been out on many corridor walks with our bid leaders in every single borough multiple times. And it's those leaders who are leading the way, who are standing in the front line to really drive the economic revival, if I may, of our particular business corridors. And they supplement city services such as sanitation, street sweeping, snow removal, graffiti removal. I mean, they're critical. They manage the public spaces, that we have. Some of them do, plantings and have different, shared spaces that they use and plazas. I mean, they're just vital. And also, I think what is also very important about what our bids do, and which we support them in, they really advocate local government about the needs in their small businesses. And so they speak to us directly about what is impacting their small businesses.
That's great. And even before COVID, there was talk of a retail vacancy tax, a tax that property owners or developers would have to pay for keeping their spaces vacant. And now we're seeing up to 1/3 of small businesses even closing for good. So what role can SBS play in kind of reversing this tide of small businesses closing? How is SBS stepping up to help out, to your point, across all 5 boroughs?
Yeah, I think, vacancy is critical. We're seeing obviously an uptick in it because of the COVID crisis. We see small businesses, unfortunately, are closing. But we do say that SBS is uniquely, equipped with the resources, the guidance, the support, and the infrastructure to help small businesses survive. And the thing about why I've been so active out there in the pandemic, going, corridor to corridor, from everywhere from Bay Ridge, to the Bronx, back over to Flushing, Queens, to Burnside in the Bronx. Like, I'm doing that, a New Dorp Lane in Staten Island. I'm saying we're all over because we have to instill confidence, which is what is missing right now in our consumers. Our consumers are lacking confidence to come back out and to really engage our small businesses. And so what we do in part is not only provide all these resources I mentioned, from commercial lease assistance. If you are needing assistance with your landlord and your lease to renegotiate that lease, we provide free lawyers for you if you're a small business. We help you navigate that process. If you need loans, we help you get loans. If you're looking for grants, we help you get grants. If you're looking to learn what it means to pivot, if you're looking for e-commerce, digital storefronts, we do all that. That's a ton of things we do. We have over 100 programs at SBS. However, what I do as a commissioner also is I've got to be out there and I've got to be the cheerleader, right, for our small businesses and tell the public that, look, we're out here supporting our small businesses. You could do it too. We went to the mayor recently in Chinatown and to demonstrate again the need for us to support our small business, calling folks out to say, come out, it's okay. If you social distance, if you wear a mask, stay home if you're sick, right? Yes, all those things, and wash your hands. That's the big four. Wash your hands. It's very important. If you do that and you absorb the rules and regulations when it comes to that, then we will thrive. It's the health crisis that really brought on the economic crisis for many, many of these small businesses. Even though they were struggling, they were still making it, right? And others were thriving before the pandemic. But now this pandemic has really brought on these challenges, and that now we've got to find a way to get them back. And that's what we've been doing. But large part of my job also is to be out there on calls like these, day and night, walking the corridors, letting everyone know city's open. Don't discount our city. Our city is coming back. A lot of folks have written our obituary already. That is not happening. This city is coming back. Our small businesses will survive, and we're going to do everything we can to help them.
That's great. So I just want to touch briefly on something new that SBS is doing. So just last week, you released a report on Black entrepreneurship in New York City. Could you talk a little bit about the findings of that report and what commitments SBS is going to be making to Black entrepreneurs moving forward?
Yeah, look, this is a very, very important and I always pause when I talk about this because it's so weighty. And when you think about the history of our country, you think about the history of how Black businesses were treated, most likely to fail, most likely not because of any fault of their own, but just systems not working to help them and support them. Understanding that most likely to be denied a loan from a bank, most likely to not have accounts with banks because of discrimination. And that's played itself out with the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program from the federal government, where only 12% of Blacks business owners received the amount that they requested for, the full amount. So you think about all of this and the history, and now what's going on through the pandemic, the fact that in those communities also, their communities are hit with, it's three hits. One, highest COVID impacted communities. Two, the most essential workers, right? Your healthcare workers, your police officers, your fire, your first responders, your EMT, coming from these communities. And then on top of that, the business community being devastated. And so you have this trifactor that really brought such damage to Black businesses. And Black businesses were struggling before, but not so much like they are now. We also know also that, when you talk about Black business and Black business families, they really helped cure the racial wealth gap. For me, I believe as a theory and as a hypothesis of my work, that entrepreneurship is the most vital way to rid the racial wealth gap. It will take Black families 228 years to get to where white families are right now in the country. So entrepreneurship is it. We've got to focus on entrepreneurship to drive that. The COVID pandemic, again, has just really brought havoc, right, on Black-owned businesses, which are now twice as likely to close during the pandemic than white businesses. And, you know, here, New York can't afford to lose another Black-owned business. New York is powered by the diversity and the innovative thinking that come from our Black businesses, right? And we want to make sure that they're successful. You know, we see this, 22% population Black residents, 2% of all business owners in New York City.
Yeah.
That is something we've got to close. So last year, we launched BNYC and in September at the Apollo. Former Commissioner Bishop, we take our hat off to him. I was working with him obviously on the committee, but he started this and drove this from SBS before I came, at least the initial stages. We spoke to 1,500 community members, businesses, clergy, community leaders, elected officials to collaboratively come up with some real positive commitments to address some of the major things that Black-owned businesses are saying that they have, major challenges. And forgive me if I'm taking a little bit on this, because this is such an important.
No, please.
You know, first was money, access to capital. I'm a former small business owner. Went to my bank, which I had multiple accounts in for multiple organizations, some of them which I was the treasurer, others that I was my own business. Came with a stack of contracts, and I still got denied. And I had the back in my money. I had a high credit score. I had everything. Well, what is that? Yeah. And I said, like, the gentleman who was the person who was looking at my loan application was an African-American male. So I said this to myself: it is not so much about an individual who's denying somebody, right? Because you know, he was very nice. He said, "I'm sorry, but I got to deny you because the rules or the processes and procedures or whatever this particular bank had blocked businesses like me out, right?" And so it was a systemic issue, not so much an individual issue. So when you deal with the systemic challenges that these businesses face, you've got to go to the core. One is money. So that's what we heard. The next one was around marketing. How do I sell my services effectively to a system and structure that really thinks of me as an other? And that's hard. That's hard to do, right? And so how do we get them to improve their marketing and grow and scale sales, so they can target more customers, they can get online, they can know what e-commerce is about, we can train and train them, teach them, and guide them and move them in the right direction when it comes to how do we get you more business so that you can grow your business. And then lastly, you know, it's about mentorship. And I think this is something that as a small business owner, I've learned. You know, if you don't have the right networks, it's very hard to do business. Business is about networking. It's about who you know and who knows you. And a lot of times people do business with who they feel comfortable with. And so a lot of the challenges that Black businesses have is that we don't have the traditional networks as others do in the business world, right? To help them along. You know, our famous president, you know, had some help. He's got some family help to get him going, right? But a lot of Black businesses don't have $400 million to leave to their son, or $1 million, or even $400,000 or $40 to leave, right? I started my business without really any support from my family, you know, in the sense of financially. They were there with me, helping me, encouraging me, but financially, they didn't really have it to do that, right? So we're tackling those three things: money, marketing, and mentorship. And I'll just say this to end. Our commitments were, you know, how do we increase equitable financing? We locked our arms with Goldman Sachs to help us, the Goldman Sachs Small Business Program, 10,000 Small Business Program, to help facilitate affordable financing and provide access to business education. That's a big one. Then we, you know, we strengthened connections, or we talked about networking and so forth with Black entrepreneurs. We linked up with Ernst & Young to create a three program to connect Black entrepreneurs to world-class resources and consulting services,
Mm-hmm.
by the way, for free. Now, I wish as a small
Mm-hmm.
business owner, I had Ernst & Young as my consultant. People pay a whole lot of money for this, right? They're getting it for free. We're getting to create a tailor-made, curated resource hub that would allow Black entrepreneurs to access materials from entrepreneurs and also experts, right? Online learning sessions, 2,000 hours of free consulting time for, man, sometimes makes me want to go back and say, I want to do that. Because that's from Ernst & Young, that's the top.
That's a good deal.
Right?
Yep.
And then also we said that's not enough, right? We need a hub. We need a place that we can point to say, this is Black entrepreneurship in New York City. So we're joined up with the Navy Yard for this $3 million investment to build out the space there for this particular program. And lastly, we joined with MasterCard to help entrepreneurs set up virtual storefronts, subscriptions to their e-commerce and cybersecurity tools, right? To provide mentorship and insight to digitally transform their business. All amazing. 3 of the largest firms in the country joined us, right? To say that we're going to partner with you to help these businesses. And that's what we're excited about.
That's fantastic. That's just amazing. Thank you for talking us through that. Just in the last few minutes here, I'm going to turn this over to a few questions from the audience. And the first one actually, I think, ties into what you were just talking about. From Samantha Dilberti, is there a way for larger corporations to support small and medium-sized MWBEs in the city?
Absolutely. Now you guys going to make me give away the store here. We're working on some really creative things. The mayor announced it a few weeks ago, something called an anchor strategy, right? And an anchor strategy just works with local anchors, right, who are anchored in the community, but large corporations, hospitals, other governmental entities to work to figure out how we can connect local businesses and MWBEs to their supply chains. So they're buying things all the time, right? For instance, hospitals are purchasing more than anybody right now because for the obvious, right? They need to make sure that they keep us safe, but also, we have a pandemic. And so, but they're spending billions of dollars. Well, wait a minute. Well, how can we figure out a way to get local businesses, small businesses, MWBEs into that supply chain and be able to work with those larger firms? So yes, absolutely. And then of course, partnering with our BNYC or our women entrepreneurship program. We have a We NYC program too that focuses on women. And we have a lot of corporate back-end and sponsorship there too. So that's what we're doing.
That's great. So next from George Watchdell, he's curious about how SBS will be helping businesses impacted by the lack of tourism.
That is so critical. We just a few weeks ago had a conversation with the Small Business Association, SBA, who's managing the PPP loan program. And when you think about that program, at least in the beginning, it wasn't really helpful to seasonal businesses because of the time frame and the time lock that was on how quickly you need to bring back your workers, and also didn't really give a lot of credence to the seasonal aspects of businesses, right? And so what we did was we really fought with our elected officials to change that, move that when workers need to return from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. So just essentially to the end of the year, we're able to do that. That helps those seasonal businesses work through some of the challenges they have to get the loan, which is essentially a zero interest if you do it right, grant, because at the end of the day, it's a forgivable loan at 1%, which means that once you fill out the paperwork and you use it for the right resources, you can actually get it forgiven and it will become a grant essentially to you. And so working with really where the resources are, federal government, to help those seasonal businesses. And then our resources at SBS are for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a seasonal business or you're not. If you need help as seasonal business, we do work with seasonal business right now in Coney Island. There are bids out there that we work with in those corridors as well. And we'll continue to do so. But that is something that is top of mind for us. And we've been strategically and surgically going around the city and providing support where needed for those particular types of businesses.
That's great. Thank you. So next from Eric, what is SBS doing to level the playing field for Black technology companies in the procurement of IT goods and services?
Thank you. That's such a specific question. And I kind of, I appreciate it because for me, coming from, the mayor's office of MWBE, and which is vital in setting the 30% goal, setting the 25 billion by 2025 goal, which we've already reached $16 billion, $1.5 billion ahead of schedule. And really moving the MWBE agenda. We hit 30% before I came to SBS. That's the first 2 quarters when I was still at the mayor's office. The city as a whole hit their 30% goal. And I'm saying that to say that the one thing that really stood out to us as we analyzed the data, and by the way, we had 2 decades of inactivity in this program. Think about it. This started back in Mayor Dinkins. So 2 decades of real inactivity. Only to the end of the last administration, local law 1 was passed, and that's because immense pressure that was put on the last administration, from the council members and communities who were saying, we need to support MWBEs in the city. So think about that for a second. And only in a matter of 4 years, I've been with the city 4 years, in a matter of 4 years, we were able to triple the utilization of MWBE's fund, triple, and awarded $16 billion. And we've certified now 10,000 businesses. Now, where am I going for the Black-owned businesses in particular? The one thing, the stain that we are working tirelessly, and that's what BNYC is all about, is to target our Black businesses in a much more surgical way. Because there's something we call it the disparity within the disparity. The disparity says that the city is not utilizing minority and women firms at a certain level. But within Black businesses, because of all that I spoke about before, because of my own experience, what I've lived, my lived experience, I can say that it is such a difficult thing, and the struggle there is so significant. So we have to focus in on that, and that's what we've been doing. So we have groups like Abrams IT consulting, who's doing very well in our program. We featured her and her company. We've got several of them who are doing well. The challenge is it needs to be more widespread. And so we've done that. And the last thing I'll say is we've raised the discretionary level. This is real now. And again, in the weeds, but that was an in the weeds question. Yeah. So I'll give you an in the weeds answer. We've raised the discretionary level from 20,000 when I first came here at the city, from the governor's office, 20,000 to when I left the mayor's office to come to SBS, 500,000, 500,000. We had to go to the state and change the law. I mean, folks don't understand. This is not I know you know, but this is not an easy thing. We had to change state law, get the governor to sign it twice. Twice I changed state law to help the city. Unheard of, right? And so that's what we had to do. So now we can target better. And now the mayor also, lastly, I'll say this, the mayor did an EO, an executive order, mandating that anything under 500,000 in the city must go through a new process in which we have to highlight Black-owned businesses, Black IT consultants, Latinx firms, Asian American firms, to make sure that they're getting their fair share. So we're moving in the right direction.
That's fantastic. So my last question for you, and the added challenge is you have to answer this in 60 seconds or less.
Oh my goodness.
This is a big challenge. What is your vision for small business in New York City in a post-COVID world?
Well, look, small businesses are the lifeblood of our city. And right now we're about recovery, right? We're about to get our businesses back. We want all of them to survive. But the thing that is going to really drive our work with our small business, our vision is creating a network of small businesses who are innovative, who are adaptable, and who collaborate or do business differently, so that when the crisis comes, they don't have to pivot at the magnitude that they have pivoted before, but they are already prepared and ready with the resources and the knowledge and wisdom to drive change in their communities and keep their business thriving. So that's the focus. We want to create sustainable businesses that can withstand anything after this pandemic, and that's the goal for our post-pandemic, operations here at SBS, and we're working tirelessly to get there.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Commissioner, for joining us. Thank you to everyone watching this. Definitely be sure to join the ABNY Young Professionals distribution list and tell all your friends about it. And I guess I'll turn this back over to Sarah and Melva. But thank you, Commissioner.
Dave, thank you so much. You're a great host. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
I just wanted to thank you again, Dave, and thank you so much, Commissioner Doris. This was so informative and interesting and engaging, and we really, really appreciate you taking this time on this stormy Tuesday evening. So thank you so, so much for joining us.
Well, my pleasure. Listen, I really appreciate it. And really, again, Melva, congratulations. Sarah, thank you. Dave, as always, keep up the good work. Thank you. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you so much.